What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for some more preview content for the big game at St James's Park on Sunday. We've got Johnny from Newcastle Fans TV once again with us. How you doing, Johnny?
I'm very good. How you doing, boys?
Yeah, I mean, look.
Could be better.
Look, I'm healthy. That's the main thing. I'm healthy. But look, we're going to be doing a combined 11. We're just setting out the rules for the combined 11 is that the player has to be able to play on the weekend in the game against Newcastle and Spurs, and we're going to be doing a neutral formation, which is going to be 4-4-2. So happy with that, Johnny?
Very happy.
All right, let's get straight into it then, and let's start off with the goalkeepers. So it's Nick Pope against Hugo Lloris. Johnny, I'll let you make your cases first.
I'm going to go with Nick Pope, which is probably no surprise. I think he's been absolutely outstanding this season. Most clean sheets, least goals conceded so far this season. Newcastle actually had the best defence this season out of anybody in the Premier League. I think we've conceded something like 24 goals this season, which is less than Man City. And he's made some big saves for us this season. And he's just been such a difference. He's a presence in the air in terms of commanding his area and coming out for crosses. And he's certainly a big reason why Newcastle are in the top four at this moment in time.
I have to say, Nick Pope's been impressive, but do you think there's been a bit of a pattern recently of him coming out of his goal and kind of screwing up a bit? Does seem to be something in there, right? Am I wrong in that?
The only thing I would say, and you're slightly correct in what you're saying, it's when he's got the ball at his feet. Sometimes he can be a bit. He's such a heavy touch occasionally. Everybody will remember that mistake he made against Liverpool, which cost him obviously the cup final essentially in playing in that game.
And
but
Wolves, he got very lucky. He should have given away a penalty as well. He got very lucky.
That was never a pen.
It was a pen. It was a pen. He got lucky.
It was a stone wall pen. That's what it was. But, no, in all seriousness, no, he's been tremendous. But it has been the odd occasion. But I think nine times out of 10 this season, he's been absolutely superb.
Are we really going to let Nick Pope creep in there against World Cup winning goalkeeper, World Cup finalist, goalkeeper, captain of France?
And he got absolutely robbed in the return fixture, Lloris, as well. What Wilson, how he hacked him down for that goal.
Come on,
You're unbelievable. You got absolutely robbed there. You should be putting the team just for that robbery last week.
As much as I want to sit here and argue Hugo Lloris's case, I just don't think I can. I think Nick Pope has been brilliant this season, if not one of the standout goalkeepers in the Premier League, and Hugo Lloris is just at the twilight of his career and making way too many mistakes for my liking. So I think we're in agreement, right?
Yeah, I think Pope's a better keeper right now than Lloris. Have to agree with that 100%.
All right, so Nick Pope goes in goal. So 1-0 to Newcastle. Let's go to right back. So Trippier against
Porro.
Where are we going to go? Porro.
Yeah.
Porro or Emerson? Porro.
Emerson can't play.
All right, Trippier against Porro. I mean, Porro hasn't played too many games. Trippier was one of ours, but we had to let him go to Atletico because he was chased out of this club because no fans wanted him. But I tell you what, most fans will probably be dying for him back now, the way he's playing his football. Look, I can't say anything but Kieran Trippier. I got no argument to make Pedro Porro, to be honest.
I'd say Trippier has been absolutely outstanding this season. One of the, not only just the best right back in this, like between the two, probably one of the best right backs in the league or in Europe right now this season.
Yeah.
And it's amazing considering the unbelievable quality England have a right back. Trent, Reece James, they've got so many good right backs, even like people like Wan-Bissaka or whatever. They've got so many good right backs. Yet Trippier is always picked every single game. That goes to his quality, and I actually think Porro, in terms of like pace and stuff, maybe when he acclimatizes more to the league, there might be a conversation. But right now, you could put Trippier up against any right back in the league, and you'd have to pick Trippier right now. How good has he been this season?
The guy gets a man of the match every single game. Every single game he's man of the match. I don't understand this.
It's one of our big regrets, I think, selling him for 20 million.
But Johnny, any arguments for Porro?
No. No. Trippier's been absolutely incredible for us. He's been an incredible signing for Newcastle, but it's not what he brings on the pitch as well. It's in terms of off the pitch and leadership, and he's just so smart. I think he's learned the dark art of football from Simeone, and he's taken that to Newcastle. I think obviously opposition fans have obviously been frustrated, shall we say, for putting it politely, with some of the antics. But that's a comes from Kieran Trippier, if I'm honest. He just knows how how to work in terms of obviously the dark arts, but in terms of what he brings on the pitch, he's been absolutely incredible for us. What we tend to do is if Trippier does go up down that right-hand side, we'll become a three at the back almost, and Dan Burn will just tuck in, and it's almost a three centre-halves, which obviously he's familiar with because he is a natural centre-half. But the amount of crosses set pieces have been pretty good for the majority of the season. He's got a good free kick in his locker. Positionally, he's very, very good. In terms of one-on-one, he's had them beating the most attacking midfielders this season. He's just been absolutely incredible for Newcastle, and the fact that he gets the city as well, which helps. And yeah, he was the first signing through the door after the takeover, and he's probably been the best signing. That's how much of a compliment I can give to him for 12 million quid. It's an absolute bargain.
We'll put it this way: how much we spent trying to replace Trippier? About 100 million. We spent 100 million trying to replace him,
and the rest.
And we don't even have half as good a player right now as Trippier at right back. We spent about 100 million trying to replace him. So there you go. Well,
sometimes you don't know what you got till it's gone, eh? But that's definitely the case with Kieran Trippier. Let's move on to the centre backs. At the moment, it's 2-0 to Newcastle. I've got a feeling for some reason this defence might be a little Newcastle heavy. But let's go into the centre backs. Let's start off with right centre back. So we're going to put forward Cuti Romero. Who are you putting forward?
So our right centre half is Fabian Schär.
Fabian Schär, yeah.
He's been absolutely outstanding. Like, I think a lot of Newcastle fans before Eddie Howe came in thought we can't trust Fabian Schär, and a two he always needs that extra man, and that's why we always seem to play five at the back. And if Fabian Schär is involved, and he had some good games, but we always felt worried that he couldn't play as a two. Eddie Howe's completely destroyed that myth. He's been absolutely outstanding this season. The goal he scored against Nottingham Forest at the start of the season was fantastic. He's got a fantastic switching pass, if you like, where you don't really think he's going to do anything, and then he'll just hit this pass about 40-50 yards towards our left hand side, where it generally has been on, say, maximum or Joe Linton this season, and it's always on a sixpence. It always seems to be fantastic. But he's been outstanding, one of our players of the season.
Look, I would say that Schär has had a better season than Cuti Romero, but I would say that if you had both players, I actually think that Cuti Romero would see more minutes in your team. I do think he is a better player. I just think that he's been let down by the system and the players around him a lot this season. So I actually think Cuti Romero is a better player than Schär, just Schär has had a better season, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I think from what I've seen from Spurs, Romero is obviously up and down, if I'm honest. I don't think he's had some good performances this season, but it's difficult because obviously when you see a team play week in, week out, which you do for Spurs and I do for Newcastle, you're always going to have that little bit of bias towards a particular player. But I think Romero is certainly, if you can get the right partner next to him, I think maybe you might see the best out of him. And I think that's the same with Fabian Schär. He's had a partner in Sven Botman, and it has clicked, it's worked. I think maybe Romero just needs that.
You can even see the difference at international level, because Romero, you see how amazing he is for Argentina, and Schär as well for Switzerland maybe isn't like the same level as he is for Newcastle, whereas Romero, when he's playing for Argentina, he's at levels above how he is for Tottenham. Look how he had an amazing World Cup. He's won the Copa America with Argentina, and I think it goes to show how much the surroundings can influence a player's performance a lot. I do think Schär's one of the most underrated centre-backs in the league, and I think he's got an absolute banger on him as well. He'll just step in and just score the odd banger as well. But I think when it comes to quality, I have to pick Romero. I do think Romero has potential to be world class, whereas Schär will never be better than very good, if you know what I mean.
I'll concede that one.
Come on, we got one in, people. Cuti Romero goes in at right centre back, left centre back. I think we'll just give it to Sven Botman now because we got no one that can compete with him.
Eric Dyer is an England international. How many caps
does Botman have? Clement Longley, Ben Davis, none of them come close to Sven Botman in my opinion.
He's been outstanding, absolutely outstanding. What a bargain, £30 million. No one really. AC Milan were interested in him, but that was about it. It was either us or AC Milan, and AC Milan said we're not going to pay that fee, and Newcastle well, we will, so we're going to buy him, and he's been absolutely sensational.
I remember Tottenham really looking at him for a while, Sven Botman, and there were always these concerns about his potential lack of pace because he's very tall. How have you found that, in terms of any concerns about any pace issues?
He's been absolutely fine. He seems to read the game really well, and sometimes if you can read the game well, that catches up with the pace because you kind of know what position where you're going to be. And he's so young as well. He's so young. I think he's 21, 22. You know, he could be Newcastle centre half for 8-10 years, and he can certainly be that if he puts the dedication and the, in terms of being like a top Premier League player, a top player potentially in Europe for Newcastle. But I think the only striker that I've really seen had the better of him was Ollie Watkins, and that was last week, which is obviously a bit fresh in the mind. But apart from that, generally speaking, not many strikers have had the better of him so far this season.
Step up Harry Kane this weekend. Let's move on to the left back to make up that back four. So who are we going to put forward? Perisic?
Yeah, Perisic. We have to put forward Perisic.
Perisic against
Dan Burn.
Dan Burn. I mean, Perisic has had quite a lot of... I mean, that's 12 assists this season, I think
12,
it is.
1 goal and 12 assists. So
One goal and 12
output's
assists
good.
in all competitions. Defensively, though, he is a massive liability, got to say that. What's your cases for Dan Burn? I mean, I know he's had another one that's had an amazing season.
He's not a left back, but he's playing left back, and he's been part of the defence that has conceded the least amount of goals. It's a difficult one with Dan Burn because like I say, he's not a left back, but he had a little spell as a left back at Brighton, and I think Eddie Howe trusts him. Not many wingers have really had the better of him. I think some wingers have had the moments, but generally as in 90 minutes, Dan Burns cope with them pretty well. Most wingers have one good run at him per game, maybe 2 per game, but he's been outstanding. He has been outstanding. I think, again, it's difficult because I think a lot of people saw him as competing for the centre-half position, and Matt Targett would be, you know, the left-back that we would go with for the majority of the season, but he's had his injury problems, and Dan Burns come in and done a job. And I think when you look at that, our defence, because it's been so settled and they're playing in, week out, it's very, very difficult, a very difficult defence to get through. But I think probably the only 2 teams that have really hurt Dan Burn have been Manchester City and Aston Villa. So that just shows the kind of pedigree he's been up against, and he's done pretty well.
He's had a really solid season. When you're looking at Newcastle's team and you're looking at where to improve, like, do you see Dan Burn as like, okay, we can get a better left back than Dan Burn, or do you think he's actually developed into a really good left back and like you'd be happy to like move forward with him there in that position?
No, I think Newcastle will go all out to get a out-and-out left back in the summer. I believe they've already looked at a couple of left backs already. They like the one from Nottingham Forest. I think it's called Renan Lodi. They do like him, but whether they'll go for him in the summer, we don't know. But I think that'll be the first position that they'll look at as strengthening, because they want to see Dan Burn as almost someone that can come in at centre half or someone that can come in at left back if needed, because he is strong in both of those areas. So at this moment in time, obviously Dan Burn will have to do, but he's been brilliant. So I'm not concerned if he starts on Sunday at all. But I do expect him to start.
Any cases for Perisic, Sim?
I just think he's better going forward than Dan Burn. That's what I'd argue.
If
I
you're-
think
I agree.
offensively he is.
Yeah, he is better going forward, but Dan Burn is that much better defensively as well. I mean,
Yeah.
Perisic is probably as better defensively as Dan
Who would
Burn
you
is.
rather? Who would you rather in your team? That's the question. And I think you're probably better off with Dan Burn.
Yeah,
But
I mean, my pick is Dan Burn.
I mean, I think Dan Burn is a better left back than Perisic. I think Perisic is better going forward, but like, you kind of always feel like you're in trouble a bit when Perisic is there. Whereas Dan Burn,
There's probably more of a case for Perisic at left mid than left back.
oh for sure. I left back. I wouldn't want Perisic there. I think Dan Burn has to go in.
All right, so bloody hell, 4-1 to Newcastle so far.
It's a surprise given how both defences have gone this season.
Yeah, I guess. But let's move into the midfield. We'll start off with the centre midfield, starting off with the right centre midfield. So we'll go for Ollie Skip. Is yours Bruno Guimaraes?
Yeah, and I don't even need to debate this one, I don't think.
No, I don't think you do, to be honest.
Yeah,
I
Ollie
mean-
Skip is just that much better.
Yeah,
isn't he?
exactly. Bruno Guimaraes has surprised me so much. He was a player that we were linked with as well. And I saw a video from Tifo, The Athletic, and they were just talking about how perfect Bruno Guimaraes would be for the Spurs system. And obviously Newcastle go and get him. But I think he's an absolutely unbelievable football player. And you were so lucky to get him, to be honest. And Ollie Skip, young player coming through. I've got big hopes for Ollie Skip, but Bruno Guimaraes is just that much forward in his development. So and he's a much better player right now.
I think with Bruno Guimaraes, I think the only team that you'd have to fight to get into is Man City's team. That's the only team that you'd only have to fight to get in. He walks in every single team, and I do think you probably are incredibly lucky to have him. And Bruno's actually only been part of the Newcastle team once where we've actually lost. 2 times this season we've actually lost a game of football. Only 2 times this season, and that just tells you how important he has been for Newcastle. He keeps everything ticking. He really does. He just keeps everything ticking from a Newcastle point of view. He's been outstanding. He just links up with the likes of Alexander Isak, Alan St-Maximin, Miguel Almiron. The amount of assists he gets, he's came with a couple of goals as well. He is outstanding, absolutely outstanding. There's fans of certain generations will argue this player is the best player I've ever seen in a black and white shirt. At this moment in time, he is the best player I've ever seen at Newcastle. And it's
nothing on David Ginola. Come on, Johnny.
He's absolutely
Great
brilliant,
player.
Bruno. He's like one of those players who like marries like the technical ability that he has with that Brazilian aggression. Like I feel like he full-blooded challenges. With a player of like his quality, do you think like maybe he should be getting more goals, or do you think he's more of just like a pace setter kind of player, and he's never going to be like a player maybe who's going to in the future chip in maybe 10 goals a season or something like that?
I think that's certainly something that you'll look to improve his game with. But we spoke to Olivier Bernard, who used to play for Newcastle in the early 2000s, and he's a Lyon fan. He's from France. He's a Lyon fan. That's where we got to see Bruno Guimaraes from. And we were talking about him and Lucas Paqueta because Lucas Paqueta was heavily linked with Newcastle last year. And he said Paqueta is Bruno, but can get 10 goals a season. And we're thinking, hold on a second, Bruno's got 5 at the minute. Like from the end of last season, because he was in a bit of a goal scoring run. He hasn't scored as many this season, but he's kind of like the pass before the pass, if that makes sense. So he's the pass before the assist. And I remember the game against Man United, nice little pass, a nice little cross into the far post, and St-Maximin heads it back for Willock, and it's 1-0. The League Cup, there was so many different assists in terms of what he brings to Newcastle, and he is just different gravy. But I do like Ollie Skip. I just need to mention that. I do like Ollie Skip. I think he's a good midfielder.
Thank you for your kudos on Ollie Skip. But that's one more Newcastle player going in. That's 5-1 now. The other midfield player, we're going to put forward Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. I mean, is it going to be Willock? Is it going to be Longstaff? Who are you going to put there?
It's a difficult one because I could say Joe Linton as well, really. It's difficult because all 3 have been exceptional, but the one player out of those 3 that Eddie Howe just absolutely loves, and he keeps mentioning him in press conferences in terms of he's so important to Newcastle, is Joe Linton, which has been an incredible transformation in the last 12 to 14 months. Yeah. We were playing Norwich last season, and Kieran Clark got sent off after 9 minutes for being the last man, so Joe Linton had to play centre midfield. He was the best player in the park, and from there, he's just been an absolute revelation. He got player of the season last year, and his performances have just improved dramatically. He's such a menace in the midfield as well. Now, we paid £40 million for him as a striker, but he's kind of turning into a £40 million central midfielder, which it's just fascinating. But he's been absolutely outstanding. I think him and Højbjerg are quite similar, really. They kind of just want to break up the play and get on the ball and just give it to everybody else who can do better with the ball, if you like. But yeah, I don't think there's much in it between the 2 midfielders, if I'm honest. I just think I would rather have Joe because I see a lot more of him. But that's just my argument on the matter.
You going to make a case for Pierre?
Yeah, I think I could make a case for Pierre. I think Pierre this season, for by and large, maybe apart from the last few games, he's been pretty consistent. I think that he's actually a pretty good box-to-box midfielder. He's really added goals and assists to his game this season. I think he's got 5 goals, 5 assists in all competitions this season, some in the Champions League. I think when comparing him to Joel Linton, I would say Joel Linton's probably a bit stronger, but I actually think Højbjerg is maybe a bit more all-round to his game. But I think Joe Linton, I have to say, he's come on leaps and bounds this season, hasn't he? And I think he's even taken it on from last season and improved, which is really impressive. Although he does love a yellow card, doesn't he, Joe Linton? I think he's got about 10, isn't he? He gets booked, I think, every single game.
Imagine him and Romero in the same team.
Yeah, unbelievable, though. He's a sea of bookings. I just think in central midfield, it's a difficult one. I think Højbjerg's I think if you put Højbjerg in Newcastle's team, I reckon he would probably be just as good, like as Joel Linton. But I think you put in Joel Linton in Tottenham's team, he would also kind of have the similar flaws to Højbjerg has, like he'd get caught out quite a bit. So I do think it's a system thing. So I think quality-wise, Højbjerg is better, but Joel Linton I think looks better right now for sure.
I think it's very tight. I agree with Johnny. I think it's extremely tight, and I think it's one of those that the Spurs fans might just slightly side with Højbjerg. The Newcastle fans might slightly side with Joe Linton. So seeing as this team is just completely Newcastle heavy, I think we can just sneak in Pierre-Emile Højbjerg just through the back door. So what would you say to that, Johnny?
I'll let you have him.
Come on. Thank you so much, Johnny. Thank you.
No, I take your point. He is. There's not much in it between the two. I do think if you put Højbjerg in this Newcastle team, I think you get better performances out of him as well. But yeah, I think Joe Linton's almost what you need in midfield at times. I just think you need a bit of bite, a bit of passion, a bit of anger, a bit of aggression. Just someone that's wants to die for the shirt a little bit. I think Ollie's skip just shows that a little bit. You can tell that he's Spurs through and through, but he just needs quality next to him. I just don't think that the Spurs really have that at this moment in time. But you can have Højbjerg.
It's a shame that Bentancur's got such a long injury, because we would have made a very big case for Bentancur. I think he's our best midfielder, but obviously he is out for a very long time. So let's move on. Let's go to the right midfielder. We're going to put in Dejan Kulusevski. Who are you going to put in?
Miguel Almiron. 11 goals so far this season for Newcastle, more than Callum Wilson, more than Alexander Isak. Yes, he did have a purple patch from late September, early October to January, where Jack Grealish must have been sick of his mentions, if I'm honest. But he's been absolutely outstanding. The partnership with Kieran Trippier on the right-hand side has just blossomed so well. And there's been so many times where Bruno's just played a little pass. I remember the Leicester goal. It's actually my favourite goal of the season from a Newcastle point of view. It was Newcastle's second goal on Boxing Day. A little Maradona from Bruno switches the play on the right-hand side, and Trippier and Miggy play a couple of passes. Bruno finds a little pocket of space, first time pass, one touch in the back of the net, and that just is one of the best goals I've seen from a Newcastle team. But Miguel Almiron, he just has that confidence now to take any defender on and think he's going to score. He loves playing at St James's Park, and he's been a revelation this season. No one would have thought he would have got 11 goals this season. He probably even thinks that he should have a tiny bit more in terms of goals and assists this season. Could he get 15 goals this season? Probably unlikely at this moment in time, but you never know.
Do you think Almiron, though, as you say, he had a massive purple patch and he was scoring like some unbelievable goals? But do you think it was a case of a bit of overperformance potentially? Now, recently, he's going through a bit of a run since that purple patch where the goals aren't as easy to come by. Or do you think that what we saw in his purple patch, that's the real Almiron, and that that's what we're should be getting used to seeing on a regular basis?
Yeah, you're quite right. That's what we should be seeing on a regular basis. I don't think it was just him that was having a good spell. It was a case of the cup final was such a massive, not a distraction, but it was always there and it was always talked about because Newcastle hadn't been in a cup final for so long that I think everybody almost, not that they forgot about 3 Premier League games, but it seemed that no one really got into this into any bit of form going into that cup final. And Miguel Almiron was one of those players, but again, on his day, who knows? I would fancy him if it's Perisic as that. Obviously, I know we've been talking about 4-4-2, but Spurs generally play with three at the back. He's going to have space to attack into, and I think we will take advantage of that on Sunday. But in terms of this team, I think Almiron's had a much better season than Kulusevski. I've been disappointed in Kulusevski, if I'm honest, because he had such a good end to last season. You think, wow, what a player! Like, he was brilliant against Newcastle at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last year. And I thought, if Kulusevski's son and Kane keep on going, and you throw Richarlison into that, who will want to fight for his place as well, you think that's going to be tough to break down. It's going to be tough to stop. But I just don't think he's been half the play he's been this season. Yeah,
I mean, he's had a very stop-start season due to injuries and everything like that. I mean, he has been disappointing this season. It's a bit similar to the one that we were talking about before, but I actually think that Kulusevski is a better player than Almiron. But I can't argue for his case because with only 2 goals and 6 assists this season, it's been a poor season from him, and I can't get away from that. And Almiron has had just a standout season, best season in his career. So, I mean, I can't really argue Kulusevski's case, to be honest. Not based on this season. I think Almiron there's very few you could argue ahead of Almiron this season in terms of the Premier League, how good he's been. But I do think in terms of age, in terms of quality, I do see Kulusevski as a player who's like more involved in games, I feel like, than Almiron, like in like build-up play and stuff, linking the play. I feel like Almiron
on that right-hand side has come up with a lot of like outstanding moments, but I feel like in general play, Kulusevski is a better player, and I think he will go on to be a better player. But ALMIRON has just had the most outstanding season that I can't begrudge him his place in this team. But I do think Kulusevski is a better player.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so ALMIRON goes in there. Another Newcastle player goes into this combined 11. Let's look at the left-hand side of the midfield. We're going to be putting in Heung-min Son. Are you going to put him in St. Maximan? He's injured, actually, isn't he?
Yeah, well, it's difficult because Eddie Howe hasn't done his press conference as we record. So he was very much, from his last press conference, 50-50. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he's not going to be involved this weekend. Okay. At worst case scenario, he's going to be on the bench regardless. So I'll throw somebody else into this debate. It's difficult because we've got a few different players that can play on the left hand side. But if I'm going to have to pick one at this moment in time, it's probably going to have to be Anthony Gordon. But we've only had 8 games of Anthony Gordon, so I don't really have a debate for this one. I think Son just has to go in. But what I will say about Anthony Gordon is that obviously there's been a lot of talk about the price tag and how much Newcastle pay for him, and he's still a baby in terms of Premier League games. He played a handful of games for Everton. Newcastle bought him on potential, and he's only made 2 starts for Newcastle, and the 2 starts were Aston Villa last week, which is tough because Aston Villa in their system under Unai Emery is very, very difficult at this moment in time. And Man City away at the Etihad, I think Eddie Howe could have been a bit nicer, giving him a couple of easier games in terms of starting games. But he has been bright in some substitute appearances against Manchester United, against West Ham in his debut. But I can't argue against Son because he is a better player at this moment in time than Son. Even though he hasn't had the strongest season this season, he could, if he switches on, potentially could have some good form going in from now to the end of the season.
Yeah, we had lots of discussions about Anthony Gordon over the summer because Spurs were looking at him a lot. And I argued that as much as I think he's like a player that gives you a lot of effort, tries hard, and is like decent dribbler, is there that star quality that you would expect from a £40 million youngster? Like, do I see that quality from him? And I know it's early days at Newcastle, but have you seen glimpses of that, or do you still think he's got a lot of like work to do on his ability?
I think everything that you said is actually accurate about Anthony Gordon. I think there's potential. I think that's what Newcastle have bought, is potential. But he does need to work on his final ball. I think that is a big, big thing that we need to see more from Anthony Gordon. There was a couple of instances against Manchester United and against Aston Villa where he was trying to get that cross in and it just missed it by a little bit. But that needs to be a little bit better, if that makes sense. If you like, because if you've got players like Alexander Isak, Callum Wilson, and players to come in the summer, they're going to be expecting a type of ball, and they're going to be expecting that ball to be delivered, and he's going to have to fight for his place. I think Anthony Gordon needs, I think he needs a good pre-season with Eddie Howe, and I think Eddie Howe just needs to try to develop him. And I think not that if he doesn't improve dramatically from now at the end of the season, will there be question marks? I think Newcastle fans will give him another full season to go, can you show us what you're about? And then maybe after that, if Newcastle have better players, then there's a debate to go, well, should we sell him? But I still think Newcastle fans will certainly not give up. I'm certainly not going to give up on him. And I hope he scores the win in the last minute against Everton and Goodison Park. And that would be my little dream. That'd be fantastic.
And I think with Anthony Gordon, I think Eddie Howe might be actually the perfect manager to develop him as well. So it'll be interesting to see how his development goes. But Heung-min Son goes in on the left wing. And let's talk about the strikers now. Well, this is actually probably the easiest one of the combined 11 because we're going for 2 strikers. Spurs only have 1 striker. So I'm guessing it's just going to be Kane and Isak up front, unless you want to put in Callum Wilson.
No, I agree. Kane and Isak, that's what I had written down. I think Isak can just be the number 10, if you like, behind Kane. And Kane could almost do that as well if you really want to. But I think Harry Kane's the best striker in the Premier League, in my opinion, in terms of an all-round package. I've mentioned Haaland scored so many goals. I think he scored 32 goals this season. It's an incredible amount of goals, and he's an incredible striker. But in terms of what a manager or a team wants from an all-round striker, I think Harry Kane is your man. I hope he doesn't go to Man United in the summer. I really don't, but I do. I think that's the only team that he can realistically go to if he wants to stay in the Premier League, unless he wants to go to Newcastle where it's 1 degree warmer. But at this moment in time, I think it's going to be Kane, and I think it's going to be Isak. Isak's been an absolute revelation. He really, really has, and you can kind of just tell he's that little bit better than what we've got. there's just certain movements and there's certain passes that him and Bruno are the only two people that kind of understand what they want. And then when you've got Jacob Murphy on one side who just doesn't have a clue in terms of what they're expecting, it just shows in an abundance in terms of the type of quality we've got. But yeah, Kane and Isak for sure. I think that's a great partnership, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Isak he's so young, he signed for 70 million, and he played a couple games, then got injured, but then he's come back and he's just really propelled you back into that, like, favourites for top four, hasn't he? He's been so good, Isak. I've got to give him a lot of credit. He's one again, Tottenham looked at, which we balked at the price, but it seems as like Newcastle are getting the benefits of that. Do you think he's better? Do you think he's a lot better than Wilson then?
As an all-round player, yes. As a goal scorer, you know, they're both very, very good in terms of being a natural goal scorer. Callum Wilson scored 10 goals this season, and that's kind of what you expect a little bit. Maybe if you're Callum Wilson from now at the end of the season, can we get another 5 goals out of him? Because I think he can be a 15, 20 goal a season striker, but he just has little injury problems. For Callum Wilson, in terms of Callum Wilson standards, he's been fit for most of the season, which is pretty good for Callum Wilson standards. But Isak's been out for 3 months, 4 months with an injury which he picked up for Sweden on international break. If we had Alexander Isak within 3 or 4 months, this wouldn't even be a debate if Newcastle were going to be in the Champions League. We would be in the Champions League next season, but unfortunately, to pick up that injury.
We've seen them play together. Do you reckon they'll play together on Sunday?
I would be surprised. I would be surprised if I was quick in terms of giving you a start 11. It would be the same back four and the same goalkeeper that's been throughout the season. I think it'll be Bruno, Joe Linton on the left. I think Joe Linton starts on the left for Newcastle. I think it'll be Bruno, Joe Willock, and Sean Longstaff in the midfield. I think Miguel Almiron comes in for Anthony Gordon and Jacob Murphy on the right-hand side. And I think Isak starts up front. And I think Callum Wilson will be the first substitute that'll come on. But if he does decide to start with both, I'll be delighted because it shows that he's really going for it. But I think Isak would have to drop in as a 10. And it would almost be like a 4-2-3-1. But I just can't see that happening for the start of the game at least.
All right, well, that brings an end to the combined 11. Let's just run through the team. Very Newcastle heavy, guys. It's Nick Pope in goal, Trippier at right back, Romero and Botman centre backs with Dan Burn as the left back, Bruno Guimaraes and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg in the midfield positions, Almiron on the right, Sonny on the left with Kane and Isak up front. I mean, that is a bloody good team. It really is. I mean, in terms of like top quality, I mean, I'd probably look to replace that right wing and replace that left back in terms of going for like maybe a league title winning team. But I think it's a really good side, really good side. And it's mad to think about, if we did this combined 11 this time last year, you're probably talking about a very Tottenham heavy combined 11. And it just shows how much difference a year can make in football. And the credit goes to Newcastle for developing as you have. And definitely some of you should be going Tottenham's way for regressing as we have. But Johnny, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm sure I can see that smile on your face. So I'm sure you're very happy with that combined 11.
Yeah, very, very happy. As long as Eddie Howe's the manager as well, that'll be the cherry.
Well, we don't even have a manager, so that's not even an option. But look, thank you for coming on today. Everyone do go and subscribe to Newcastle Fans TV, some great Newcastle content, but you might want to stay away from there maybe Sunday afternoon. But we'll see you all. Thank you, Johnny, for coming on. Like, subscribe and comment as always.
Come on, you Spurs.